Welcome to the Workplace Minute, powered by H3 HR Advisors and sponsored by WorkHuman. Thanks for joining me for your quick briefing on what's important in the world of work. My name's Steve Boese. Today on the show, we're looking at TRAPs, Training Repayment Agreement Provisions, clauses that some employers use to recover training costs if a worker leaves too soon. Supporters say they protect investments in employee development, but critics argue they can saddle workers with debt and keep them stuck in jobs that they want to leave. Let's break it down. So what are TRAPs? TRAPs, or Training Repayment Agreement Provisions, are contractual clauses that require employees to reimburse their employer for training costs if they depart before a specified time. These costs can include normal orientation or mandatory compliance programs, but in practice they may be inflated and structured to penalize employees for early exits. Why do employers use them? From an employer's point of view, TRAPs protect the investment in training, especially amid high turnover and the push to professionalize more jobs. As non-compete agreements face legal headwinds, TRAPs serve as another method to deter employees from leaving, sometimes framed as a stay or pay mechanism. Initially used in high-skilled industries, they've spread into sectors like fast food, retail, trucking, and healthcare. So what do critics and employees say? Critics argue that TRAPs function like indentured servitude, trapping workers, especially low-wage workers and people of color, in unfair debt for minimal or generic training. Workers often don't even know that they're agreeing to a TRAP because the terms are buried in onboarding documents. And some TRAPs invoke punitive fees ranging from thousands to tens of thousands of dollars, with exorbitant interest rates and aggressive collections, sometimes cutting into wages below minimum wage and damaging employees' credit. So how have TRAPs evolved over time? TRAPs first emerged in the 80s and 90s for specialized high-training professions like pilots, engineers, and finance. But in recent decades, their usage has expanded dramatically, even into low-wage sectors, which some call a shift from a 4% prevalence in 2014 to much higher levels today, with more widespread adoption in fast food, retail, nursing, healthcare, trucking, and more. Some 10% of workers reported being subject to a TRAP in a 2020 survey. So what protections do workers have for these TRAPs? Well, many states prohibit deductions that bring a worker's pay below the minimum wage. Enforcing a TRAP may violate wage and hour laws in that fashion. And the National Labor Relations Board has flagged TRAPs as interfering with employee rights under Section 7 of the NLRA, especially if repayment obligations are not reasonably tied to actual costs. And FTC has issued a rule banning non-competes and may treat TRAPs as de facto non-competes if they unduly restrict employee mobility. And at the state level, 11 states, including Illinois, have antitrust or unfair competition laws that could be used to restrict TRAPs. And some states like California and Colorado have already enacted prohibitions on TRAPs in specific contexts, specifically in healthcare. So if you're an employer still using these or considering using TRAPs, you need to use them sparingly and limit them to roles that are genuinely costly and specialized in training and ensure the terms are fair. And you need to make sure the repayment amounts are transparent and are clearly tied to actual training costs and avoid punitive fees. You should offer sliding scale repayment schedules that can reduce fees over time and cap the total payment to a reasonable amount. You should also disclose the terms of the TRAPs prominently and early in the onboarding process, giving employees time to review and ask questions about them, and don't bury them in the fine print. And finally, consider less coercive alternatives, things like counteroffers, retention bonuses, making a better culture in the workplace, and training that benefits the employee more broadly. TRAPs may offer some companies short-term retention benefits, but at what cost? When debt trumps workers' dignity, productivity, and fairness, it's time to ask ourselves, are we investing in our people or merely locking them in? Building trust, transparency, and genuine opportunity be a better path to loyalty than binding employees with these terms and perhaps punitive debt? It's time to think harder about whether TRAPs do more harm than good and whether such TRAPs belong in the workplace at all. That's it for today. Thanks so much for listening, and a big thank you to WorkHuman for supporting the Workplace Minute. If this episode made you think about how your organization treats its workforce, please share it with a colleague. I'm Steve Boese, and this has been the Workplace Minute from H3 HR Advisors.